Today I'm sharing my very best homeschool tips and tricks that I've learned over the last 6 years of homeschooling my kids. So grab your pen and a piece of paper and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome to our homeschool table. My name is Jerilyn. I'm a homeschool mom of 3 kids, ages 11, 4, and 2. My oldest daughter is going into 6th grade next year, and my son, who is 4, will be doing pre-K. So today's video is part of a collaboration with Davine from Calm in the Chaos Homeschool and Shauna from Homegrown Homeschool. So you will want to check out the playlist linked down below in the description box at the end of this video so that you can see what the other moms are sharing today as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to split this video into 2 kind of sections. The first section will be for planning and organization tips, and then the second part will be kind of scheduling and the day-to-day things that go on in your homeschool. Don't forget to stay till the very end because you will definitely not want to miss the very last tip, which is the game-changing tip that really helped me when I first started homeschooling. So the first tip that I have for you today is to schedule yourself some planning days. Now, this could be once a month, or you could maybe do every 6 weeks or 9 weeks, however you kind of plan your homeschool year out. But my suggestion is to use one of your break days to do a little bit of homeschool planning for the next section of your school year. So the way that I've kind of scheduled our homeschool year for this coming year is to do terms of 9 weeks. So every 9 weeks, I will need to get a few things prepared for the next term because I don't necessarily want to do every single thing this summer. So what you will need to do is write on your calendar when you are going to take a planning day. And it doesn't have to be during the week when you're doing school. It could be on a Saturday, it could be a Sunday afternoon, whatever works for you and your schedule. But make sure to actually put on your calendar a specific day for planning and getting things ready or preparations. And then throughout the term before that planning day, if you think of something that you will need to do on that day, keep a list, maybe in your planner or just a separate sheet of paper where you can write down the things that you have in mind for what you need to do that day. My second tip is to have a mom binder, or what some people call a working binder. So I like to have a Charlotte Mason quote here on the front of my binder, and I just keep lots of odds and ends here in the front. This is something that I got from our church that I like to go through with my daughter, just who I am in Christ. There are some notebooking pages that I keep in here that I want to do, some maps. I could put all of these into a pocket in the binder, but since they're laminated, they don't fit quite as well, so I put them in the front cover. I just have some sticky notes and pencils and pens. And then I like to keep our hymn of the month, and I usually just collect a few months that we're working on in here and just have those on hand for when we listen to Happy Hymnody. Then I like to have a school calendar and any of the other kind of planning forms that I might need in here. And then I have my sunlight section. So here is where I keep any of the weekly schedules for my instructor's guide. And the way that I like to do this is I keep a little orange tab right here. This is the week that I'm on. So I need to go through and put all of these away from the last several weeks that we've worked on. But then I just have the weeks that we are going to be working on finishing up during the summer for sunlight. I also keep our foldable map in here and the timeline figures that I need to have my daughter put in her timeline book. Then after that, I have what is called my read aloud section, because in Sunlight they provide read aloud notes for whatever you're reading aloud. There's also notes for the poems that you're reading, and then also for the readers. I don't have any notes in here right now for the readers. I've already put them away. But those are some of the things that I like to keep in my mom binder. My next tip is to have a mom checklist. This is my mom's summer checklist page, and I have at the top all of the things that we do together. Then I have the section for my daughter and the things that she works on every day, and then some things that I need to work on with my son. And then at the end of the day, I like to have a little checklist of any of the things that I need to grade or mark off or have my daughter do with me, like narrations. And then I have a little section called Meeting with Mom that we kind of go over the day's work and talk about anything that we need to. And I just really like to have a little checklist to help me remember all of those things and what I need to do. So I just have a section for each day of the week. I've been using this for quite a while instead of using a homeschool planner where I write everything out every day. This just helps me to not really have to plan as much at the end of a week for the following week because it's already printed out right here. So if there's anything that I know we won't be doing, I can take it off of the week's checklist for the next week. And if I know that there's things that we can add because we're going to have more time at home, then I will add that. And instead of writing it all out each week in my planner, I just prefer to have a little checklist already printed. Along the same lines, I also have a checklist for my daughter that looks almost exactly the same. She just doesn't have as many check boxes because this is for her and for my 4-year-old. So hers is just a little bit smaller at the top, but I also have the section of Meet with Mom, so that she knows that we need to grade math and language arts and things like that. So her chart looks almost exactly the same, and I have it on another clipboard for her in her schoolwork area. So that leads to my next planning and organization tip, which is to have a designated spot for all of your kids' things. So I have a shelf over on a bookshelf in our homeschool area where she has her own little bucket of all of the things that she needs. So it has any of her books and workbooks. It has her checklist on a clipboard. She has all of her reference materials in her box, along with her Bible study, some pencils, and anything else that she might need. And she kind of changes her things out as she needs to. So I just kind of let her be in charge of that now that she's a little bit older. In some way or another, I've always had something for her to kind of put all of her stuff in to keep in one place so that it's not scattered around everywhere and that we're not constantly looking for things. Okay, so now let's shift a little bit into kind of the scheduling and day-to-day running of your homeschool. So my first tip for that would be to set your things out the night before. I have a basket where I keep everything that we're going to be using for our kind of Bible basket time. And so I like to set out my mom binder and get out any of the books or resources that we are going to need to use for that morning. So sometimes I set it out the night before after I've kind of wiped down the table and gotten everything ready for the next day. And sometimes I do it in the morning before everybody's kind of up and around. But either way, I like to have everything kind of set out and ready to go so that I can just go through each of the things in a timely manner, and I'm not getting up and looking for things and losing everybody's attention. Okay, my next tip is to keep things simple. And this was actually one of the goals that I have had for basically this entire last homeschool year, and I am still working on it. So when I say keep things simple, first I mean that when you start your school year, keep things basic. So do subjects like math and language arts and science and history, but maybe wait to start some of the kind of more enrichment type of things like nature study and poetry memorization or poetry study, just things that kind of take up little bits of extra time, but at the beginning of the school year, you really just need to focus on getting in a good routine. So usually how I kind of do it is we ease in to school over the first maybe 3 weeks or so. So the first week we might do one subject that is for just my daughter's independent work and one subject that is us together. Then the next week I might add two more things. to her independent work and 2 more things to our kind of together subjects that I do with her. So that really helps us to kind of gradually transition into the school year without just kind of shocking everybody. And that has really worked for us. Although this last school year, if you watched any of my updates, you might remember that it was actually really hard on my little kids, even to ease in. So this year, we actually are doing a little bit of still our individual subjects and a little bit of together subjects over the summer so that it doesn't seem quite as foreign of a concept when we do get to August and start our actual school year. So I'm hoping that that will really help us, but just add on as you go instead of just everything all at once. As you get into your school year, you might notice that you need to make little tweaks here and there, but what I don't recommend is having like a massive overhaul of your schedule. Maybe just change one thing and see how that goes for a week or 2. And then if that isn't really working, then make another tweak if you need to. But instead of just constantly having like massive overhauls of your schedule or routine or however it works for you in your homeschool, just make little adjustments here and there. Speaking of adjustments, that is one thing that I want to mention about this video. If you are finding that you are really encouraged by lots of these tips, don't feel like you need to implement them tomorrow or even next week or next month. Keep a list of some of the things that you want to be working on and just make those little tweaks here and there instead of trying to do everything all at once, because that will lead to kind of overwhelm and maybe even burnout, and we don't want that. My next tip is to set up a morning routine and chore list for not only yourself, but for your kids. Now, one of the things that really helps in our homeschool is to have our morning chart and chores done before we do any school. So I highly recommend getting some very specific things done in the morning. So things like making your bed, tidying up your room, getting dressed, brushing your teeth, eating breakfast, things like that, and then moving into chore time. Now, I have a video that I recently put out a couple months ago that I will link for you up above and down below, all about kind of how we do chores at our house. And summertime is a really good time to work on establishing chores if you don't already have that, because you have a little bit more time where you can be teaching the different chores and making sure that your kids really know how to do those chores before you expect them to do them on their own. So this would be a great time to start a new chore set, which is actually something we're going to be doing in the next couple of weeks, because my daughter's kind of tired of some chores and I would like to teach her some new ones so that she has more skills when it comes to homemaking and doing things around the house. Part of why we like to get all of our chores done before we start school is because it helps the house to be refreshed and ready to go so that it's not cluttered and messy as we get started into our homeschool day. Obviously, over the course of the homeschool day, things are going to come out and toys are going to be played with and there'll be papers everywhere, and we'll deal with that. The next tip I have is to prepare snacks. If you have one child, 3 children, or 14 children, you know very well that they're always hungry. And as soon as you sit down to do something very meaningful, all of a sudden they need a snack. And then you have to get up and go get them something or send them off. But they're still interrupting in some sort of way usually. And even with the best instruction and teaching in how to do things themselves, sometimes it's really nice to just have everything ready to go. So I like to have some snacks ready, maybe some apples cut or bananas out and ready to go to be grabbed easily. I like to cut up cucumbers ahead of time and just have some things that we can snack on, whether we're at the table here or sometimes we're sitting in the living room on the couch. They can just eat a little bit of a snack while I'm reading or we're listening to something. And it's just nice to have it kind of ready to go, easy to pull out, so that you don't have to worry about getting up when you're already working on something. So my next tip is to use timers. So this one is the one that my daughter uses for her speed drills with Christian Light Education math. And so she already has it set to 1 minute. But We also use timers sometimes when we need to just work a little bit faster with usually like morning chart and chores and routine type of things. But we do also use them like for our 10-minute tidy up in the afternoon, which I'll share about in just a minute. I would not use timers with any kids that might have a little bit of like extra stress or just being overly anxious with regard to doing things quickly. So I would definitely not recommend them for every single person, but for a lot of kids like my daughter, she just sometimes needs a little bit of motivation to do things a little bit faster. And so sometimes we just use a timer to beat the clock. So I would just make it something kind of fun, like, ooh, do you think that you can get it done in 3 minutes? And see how that goes. My next tip is to have an after school routine. So what we like to do is have our table, because this is where we eat all of our meals, including lunch during school time. So I like to have the table all cleaned off and ready to go so that later on in the day when we have dinner, it's easy to set the table and get everything out and ready for that. So I like to have my daughter put all of her homeschool things away. I put my things away, and then we do a 10-minute tidy up or whatever you want to call it. But what we like to do is to actually clean each room together. Now, this really helps because then we don't have any arguing about, well, so-and-so got this out and didn't pick it up, and so-and-so did this, and it's not just one person having to do everything, even though it's usually the little kids that get stuff out. But it's really nice because then we can quickly get one room done, move on to the next room, like the living room, which is right in the same area as our dining room. Then we pick up everything in the kitchen towards the bedrooms, and we'll even sometimes do the bedrooms quickly if they're not too messy. The little kids get stuff out during school time and they wind up taking it all over the house. So it's really nice to be able to kind of reset the house so that especially when daddy comes home later on in the day, it's not a complete disaster. Now, this leads right into my last and most life-changing tip of all of the tips that I ever found when I was first starting homeschooling, and that is to have a quiet time in your house. When I first started staying home, my daughter was 5, and she was just at that stage where she wasn't really taking naps anymore. And I was not used to being at home all day long. I was not used to having someone talking to me all day long. And I just needed to have a little bit of quiet time in the afternoon. And I don't even remember where I found out, but someone mentioned on a homeschool video one time that they have quiet time even for kids that don't nap. And I thought that was genius. So I highly recommend if you have kids that are not napping anymore, it's okay. You can still have a quiet time where the older kids can be doing quiet activities or listening to an audiobook, something that they can just do by themselves. And then if you have little kids like I do, that little kids can be napping during that time. So here at our house, we have nap time at about 2 o'clock until 4 o'clock because that's about how long the kids sleep. And it works out really nicely. And so sometimes I can get things done like making videos or any kind of volunteer work that I'm doing for church. I get laundry folded a lot of times during quiet time or listening to audiobooks myself. So it's really nice to just have that little time where we're all kind of by ourselves doing something individually. Well, that is all that I have for you today. I would love for you to share your best homeschool tips down below in the comments so that myself and other moms can get some other good ideas of things that you have learned in your homeschools as well. Don't forget to check out the playlist down below in the description box so that you can hear what all of the other moms are sharing today. And thank you again to Davine from Calm in the Chaos Homeschool and Shauna from Homegrown Homeschool for hosting today's collaboration. Don't forget to click that subscribe button before you leave and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today at our homeschool table, and we'll see you next time.